Hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel, and welcome to, more book reviews. I know. Yes, it's an August wrap-up, but then I watched G's little welcome to Orilium, we're so excited to go back thing, and she was like, by the by, you might want to do the lore thing we talked about in spring, that little adventure is the second half of the lore quest that comes out now. So, I combined my TBR with the lore quest, and it got messy fast. So if I had first sounded like a raving lunatic when I was talking, you might not know about the Orilium Readathon. It is a year-long readathon. There are 2 major semesters, spring and fall. We are currently in the fall semester, and there are also fun things you can do throughout the year. One of these is the lore quest. There was part of it we were told about in the spring, which I put off until the very last possible moment. For this, there was this whole adventure thing, and I'm going to take you along with me. I'll be posting some of the photos I had to take, telling you the entire storyline. Let's get into it. We're in the lore classroom. This is the class that you have to take for a lot of classes, but anyone can do the challenge. We're hanging out. We're in the classroom. Our professor enters and he's like out of breath and sweaty and nervous. And he's like, look, I did not plan on doing this today. I don't have enough time to do this, but... And then this massive force shatters the door off the hinges. The whole class flinches and ducks. And then a group of 5 or 6 mages come in, shouting spells, running for the professor. Droplets of blood fall from his palm and go onto this parchment beneath his hand. The hunters silence the professor. He cannot speak. The desk is basically transmuted to ash. And they explain that this professor, look, he has been participating in an experiment. And he clearly has unfortunately suffered some lingering side effects. He needs urgent care. They're going to carry him away. He is now unconscious. Look how peaceful he looks. Now, here's the thing. When his last droplet fell, everyone's lore books open to the specific legend. Okay, the legend of Dia. Now, everyone's talking about it. We already knew this legend, okay? When we see something shimmering in the book, so we turn the page and spot something faintly shimmering text. So this is a choose your own adventure deal. So we have a couple of options. We could check it under direct sunlight, pour water over it, or check it under true light, which is magic. Of course, I decided to check it under true light. And the prompt was to take a picture of my current read under my favorite shiny thing. The book that I was reading at this point was The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. So my favorite shiny things are, unsurprisingly, my wedding rings and the extra wedding band my husband got me when I was quite pregnant and unable to wear my typical bands. But this is the book that I chose to take a picture of with this. I was reading multiple things at the time. Now, I was really looking forward to this book. So Casey McQuiston had written 2 adult books and then 1 young adult book. And I did not love her young adult book. I kind of didn't finish it totally. Finally, I was like, yes, this sounds amazing. We have 2 bisexual lovers. One identifies mostly as female, but she's they, them type thing. She's sort of androgynous by the end of the book. And it doesn't really specify her gender, and other people call her she at different times. It's very gender fluid. Named Theo, which we find out is short for Theodora, but she does not like that. And then we have the boyfriend Kit. They were childhood besties, then they turned crushes, then lovers, then they got together, and then they broke up in a freaking airplane, over the Atlantic Ocean, on their way to their dream vacation, which was this food and wine tour across Europe through all the most romantic cities there. Idiots. Neither of them took the trip, so they both saved their vouchers for 48 months, which is 4 years. No voucher lasts for 4 years, okay? No voucher lasts for 4 years, but whatever. So they both decide the very last month that it's viable and usable to go use it. So they meet up together and realize they're on the same trip. And at first they're just you know what? Let's see who can get with our hot Italian tour guide first. And then they're no. Let's see who can get with the most people on this tour first, because they're both bisexual, so it's kind of really even playing field. I was so excited for this, and parts of it were great, but parts of it were not. And here's my advice to you for this book. If you are a plot-driven reader, run. This, while very well written, is so winding and meandering. Compare it to one of those tour guide bus roads on a cliff, okay? Is the view beautiful? Yes. Do you get to look over and see some amazing stuff at times? Yes. Are there other times you wish you could just sleep and you have a headache and you wish everyone would shut up? Yes. The writing about the food and the wine was by far the best part. I was so hungry reading this book. The descriptions were absolutely phenomenal. Okay, phenomenal. The way they were described, talking about fruits and berries and flowers. At one point, I think something was described as like an old saddle, and I was like, wait, no, I get it. This makes sense to me. Why does that make sense to me? And then I looked in the back, and apparently Casey McQuiston has literally written for not just like Condé Nast Traveler, but Bon Appetit. Okay, of course she can write about food and wine better than anyone I have ever read before. If you enjoyed like Under the Tuscan Sun, Eat, Pray, Love, if you're into that kind of book, this is probably going to really lure you in. It also has some really good, yummy scenes between Theo and Kit towards the end. Like, that was really well done. But it did not have near the amount of spice I was expecting, especially coming from Casey McQuiston. Like, especially upon her return to adult. And especially given the premise of the story, I wanted more spicy scenes. I wanted more heat. I wanted more of that. And instead what we got more of was this like meandering tour through these beautiful cities. And like they would arrive in a city and you get these great descriptions, and then there would be like an activity, and then they would wander off and be like, oh, I have a friend here. Let's go like work at a vineyard for a day or work at a restaurant for a day. And that's not how those tours work, first of all. Second of all, you're wandering through this thing with them, and then you get like slips back into the past with no warning. This is what we're doing. Then you have one of them like half talking about the past but still staying in the present, and then you have them talking about the past together. It feels so non-linear. Like, it's fine, but that's what I mean about this is so meandering. You're wandering from place to place. You're wandering around timeline to timeline. You're seeing their points of view back and forth all over the place, and then you get halfway through the book, and for some godforsaken reason, Casey McQuiston's like, you know what, we've seen everything from Theo's point of view. Now we're just going to switch and get the entire rest of the book from Kit's. Alternating points of view? Fine. One entire half of the book from one person and then switching to one entire half of the book from another. You know what? Haven't seen it done before. Turns out I effing hate it. It took me so long to wrap my brain about suddenly where you are after 150, 200 pages from one person in another person's voice. Some of the same stuff repeats, so you're hearing about certain things twice, and you're seeing some of the same things again from the other person's point of view. Meandering. I almost wondered if this was going to be my first DNF, but it wasn't bad enough for me to be like, I hate this. I just wasn't really compelled either. I've given both of Casey McQuiston's other adult books 5 stars. This one, maybe 3.5. Yeah, this is not my favorite. I was really disappointed by the pairing. I really was. Also, it was the wrong choice. So love that so much for me. It did not work. I have to go back and try another approach. I decided next, I'm not going to pour water over it because that might ruin it. So I'm going to check it under direct sunlight. And for this, you had to take a picture of your current read in sunlight. The book that I chose to take a photo of in sunlight was... I got my very first arc from Entangled Teen. Oh my god, someone knows I exist, and they sent me a book to review. So this is Repeat After Me by Jessica Warman. So it's about this girl who goes on a class trip, and basically it's Groundhog Day, except she's trying to lose her virginity on this class trip with her boyfriend, and it goes hellishly wrong. I can't tell you exactly how badly it goes, but just whatever you're picturing, it's worse. Like, it's worse, and it's grosser. So while she's there, the night before, she ends up eating this ceviche. They're on this beautiful island. She's there with like the cool teacher and some friends. Her stupid roommate like stole her Swedish fish. It's been a weird day all around. So when she's offered this ceviche from, by the way, this octopus who she's told is like magical, wonderful, amazing, and cannot die. Immortal? Yeah. I know. She is horrified. There's some animal cruelty here when they like lop off a tentacle and are like, here, best ceviche of your life. It was the best ceviche of her life. Don't worry, the tentacle grows back in like a second. Sybil's fine. We love Sybil. What we don't love is that this locks her into a time loop, and she's living this day over and over and over and over and over again. Lost Swedish fish. Can't lose her virginity. Disaster upon disaster. It's a fun time loop. So here's the thing with this book. First of all, I'm not a teenager. So thank you, Entangled Teen. It was an experience, and you know what was great about it? This satire, and satire, oh it is, it was really well written. The writing was great. And what it was able to do This legit make me feel like I was living in the summer after my high school experience. You're just on the brink of adulthood, but you don't have all the worries, but you have that taste of freedom. Those moments where everything feels super important. It took me there. It did that. And that was pretty fantastic. It was also kind of vulgar. You know what? Teenage boys, they're gross. And we get multiple points of view. And if you don't like hearing from those boys about, let's just say, gratuitous self-pleasure, skip. If you can't handle vomit in large quantities, skip. However, this absurd fever dream also managed to make me not hate a time loop, which is not that easy. I often get bored. This, very few things actually repeated and stayed the same. Instead, every day was pretty darn different. Did we see the occasional murder that did not stick? Did we see her realizing, oh, I can do anything I want to? We finally saw a character who realized that and took advantage of that in ways a teenage girl might. Yeah, I appreciated that because there are definitely some things I would do if I realized that, like, nothing I did today was gonna matter. Like, I don't know, eat nothing but chocolate for a day. I don't have to pay that price tomorrow. I would go for it. The age group does feel quite narrow because it is like losing your virginity, some very vulgar stuff. It is definitely, you know, you need to be that higher high school, but I think once you hit a certain point in college, you're also gonna outgrow it. However, this was so true to that high school experience, like what I was talking about, feeling like I was a senior in high school for a few moments, that I would hesitate to say changing anything would be a good idea either. It was one of those books where you can't look away. I gotta know what's behind the curtain. I gotta know what's coming. I wanted to look away at some points. I very badly wanted to look away at some points, but I just couldn't. And at no point was I like, yeah, I got this figured out. I know who's doing what. I know like what's going, On the other hand, that's maybe why I liked it. That's maybe why it did transcend and it was something that I could enjoy. Because I don't know what this book was about. Was it about a girl trying to lose her virginity? Was it about a class trip? Was it about le petit mort? Was it about appreciating the time that you do have or don't have? Was it about how most teenage guys think with the wrong head? You zoom in and it's about a girl stuck in a time loop. You zoom out and it's about creation itself being this own never-ending time loop. Or maybe it's just an author pranking us all. After reading this book, who knows anything? The one thing that bugged me was we did get the one teacher's point of view, and like his voice didn't change that much from the children's for reasons that become clear later in the book. Maybe that makes sense to a certain point, but at the same time, like, I almost feel like the book could have benefited from not having his point of view at all. I understand why it was there, but having been a teacher at one point, I'm not sure any teacher would have said, thought, or done some of the things he did. I know they can be explained, but like, it gave me the ick. It gave me the ick. I gave this 3.5 stars. I rounded up to 4 to review it on Goodreads. It had a lot of the things that I look for in a book. It had really, really great writing. It had really strong characters. They had depth. They had interest. They were original. Did I love all of them? No, but I had very strong reactions to all of them. It had originality. It was highly readable. I couldn't look away. It made me laugh. And despite the copious amounts of bodily fluids, it kept me reading. I read this in one day. I just couldn't quite, but what is happening next? So thank you, Entangled Teen, for my very first arc. It was a wild, wacky experience. I put this book down and my brain was just done for like the day. Is it for anyone watching my channel? You know what? If you love time loops and any of that sounded interesting to you, it could be. It is an out there read, but I know plenty of us read YA, and I don't think this is necessarily teen. It's just a teen voices in a teen setting, but the ideas and the writing, not teen. So you do with that what you will. And thankfully, this was the correct choice. We reveal this magical writing. We get this little like riddle. It says, present secrets can be answered only by the past. Go to the start. What does that mean? Present, past, start? The page of said history book is hiding somewhere in the G drive. And we had to go hunting through the whole G drive to find what we were looking for. And eventually we did. It was called The Age of Dissonance. And we get a message on it that says, follow the crescent to the Everdawn. We don't know what the Everdawn is. So we essentially get a map with locations that might relate to a crescent. So our reading prompt to like engage with this nap is to read a book with the moon on the cover. And for that book, I chose Forged by Blood by Agvar Oxen. It is indeed a moon. I know that after reading it for sure, but you can also tell on the reverse dust jacket a little more clearly. I was afraid this was going to be intense. It's got blood right in the title. And based on the pictures alone, I was like, oh boy, lots of sharp, pointy things in all of these. I'm a little nervous, Fairy Flute, what to do in here. And indeed, both the summary and the story itself tells us we're starting off with a murder of the main character's mother, in fact. So that to me, and she really is just trying to survive, okay? She's living in this really tyrannical type of age where we basically have people without magic who are suppressing the people with magic. Her people are called the Olosu, and they are being suppressed by the Ahais. And the Olosu are the ones with this blood magic. And this magic system, you know, it's her birthright, so her mom's trying to secretly teach it to her. But unfortunately, it also costs her mother her life. She literally watches her mom be murdered in front of her, despite the fact that she's literally just saved someone's life with her magic. She's kind of biding her time and like doing her best to like lay low. And then all of a sudden, this mysterious and kind of devious Lord Quenzi shows up, and he's like, look, I can help you save your people, all right? Have you noticed like there's been less violence in this region? Well, I can help that continue and like not let these kids be sold basically to do circus tricks and be treated really, really badly. I can outlaw that. If you help me kidnap the Eye Prince, and then I can like be the hero, okay? And return him. That's it. No harm, no foul. No one's getting hurt. You just have to kidnap him. Not suspicious at all. Okay, so she takes her bestie, her childhood friend Colin, and they go out on this journey that of course is so much more dangerous than anybody could have possibly imagined and so much more complicated. And then she and the prince meet each other and realize they have like secrets and a past. Of course they do, because that's the way these stories go. And of course they also have a forbidden, unmistakable attraction. Yeah, we get a little love triangle-y. It gets quite complicated. That's what I was really hoping to cling to if it got bad. And here's the deal. Okay, this book was great. The Nigerian mythology, absolutely fantastic. What is so great about going into books like this as opposed to a lot of these like standard fantasy books back here, which I love. I don't know the mythology. So I am reading stuff where I don't know any of the background stuff. I don't know the stories. I don't know the lore. I don't know the magic. I don't know the creatures that I'm about to be terrified by, quite frankly. Yeah, no, really scary ones in this one. Really, really fun. So it's all brand new. It's all fresh. Outside the standard tropes, okay, we've got like teenage girl wanting to save the world, save her people, love triangle, big journey. Like we get the tropes, but aside from that, everything else, totally original, totally unrecognizable in a lot of ways. I loved this book so much. The magic system was great, okay? It had all these hard limits, which was great because it actually explained, for once, you know how authors always dodge telling you how the magical people came to be oppressed by the humans with no magic? No, we saw exactly why that happened, how that was able to happen, and we even saw the humans take down a magical person, okay? We saw all of it, so it was completely believable for like the first time possibly ever, okay? Major kudos to the author for that, for starters. The writing also had this like really great rhythm. It draws you in right away and gives you the sense of like familiar storytelling almost. I loved that. Now in the middle, I do have to say it felt a tiny bit rushed, but I think this was maybe just my personal preference because that's where the Nigerian mythology and all the lore really was thrown at us the most. We were given so much of it and it was fantastic. I wanted more. Look, I had no stock images in my brain, okay? For all these settings and creatures and everything, we were going from this magical, amazing, wonderful description to another place, seeing another creature in it. Like all these things were happening so quickly, just scene after scene after scene after scene, and I wanted to just like sink into them a little more. And this author was like, and next, and next, and next. But on the other hand, like it was very balanced. The beginning, it gave you time to settle into the story. And at the end, we actually had denouement. What was that? Hang on. You mean you're not just gonna like rush and like cut everything off and give us this horrible cliffhanger? You're gonna let the characters have those conversations after this massive fight and battle and after all these horrible things happen and like there's these terrible things with massive repercussions. You're gonna let the characters talk about like their relationships and like what's gonna happen next? Who does that? this author. We had a chance to settle for a sec. I'm now sated, and I have a sec to pause, and I'm completely ready for the next book. I have to say this was 5 stars for me. I did not even necessarily expect to like this book. I feared this was going to be my DNF and I was not going to be able to handle this book. But yes, moon on the cover, totally loved it. It was so good. So we've got our map. We're now engaged in the search. For a while we didn't get the maps. We had the option of like trying to guess which locations it was going to be. I did not do that. But the first place that I went to was the Astra Temple. It was the first thing I could choose from, and I was like, crescent, maybe we should go opposite with sun. We use sunlight to reveal the last clue. I thought I maybe figured it out. I did not. But all I had to do was try and snap a picture of a sunrise sunset. And I actually did it with the copy of the book that I was reading it the first time, because for some reason I thought that was part of it, which it wasn't, and this was impossible. So it's a craptastic picture. For this, I read The Beach Club by Elin Hilderbrand. I was concerned about this one because it is basically women's literature, and it's described about being about Mac, this guy who works at a hotel. It has kind of become his life. It's also about love. This girl who's like 40 years old and has basically taken a job there to just find someone to impregnate her. It's also about a man named Vance who has his African-American pride and festering resentments. And this season, a gun and a woman offer him a chance to get even with the man he hates most. And then it's also about the owners and their daughter, who is wild, beautiful, and 18, is about to break their hearts. And finally, Lacey Gardner, the grand dame of Beach Club, who is in her 80s and who I love with my whole heart and deserved better, just letting you know. So this was written in 1999. This was her first like book that started all the Nantucket series, and I've read a few of her books, and here's what I learned about this one. It was racist. This unfortunately did not age well. This was so dated. Mac Peterson was indeed a man-child who was with a woman for like 8 or 9 years. The woman lied to him and was like, I don't want to get married. Resented him the entire time and was mad at him because she did want to get married. Did not tell him that. The two of them fought because of this. He was a man-child, however, and could not commit. He could not decide. Did he want to go home and deal with the farm he just inherited? Did he want to sell it? I don't know. Make a decision. And then he finally does by admitting he cheats on his fiance and telling the other woman, she's like, sorry, I only want you for 3 weeks a year when I come visit. Are you tired yet? I'm tired yet. That's just one character. Yeah, it was racist. It was racist. It was definitely racist. He is the one who impregnates our chick. If this is a spoiler, I don't care. You're not going to read this book. Let's not have the only African-American character in a book threaten a white guy with a gun who's his boss. Let's not do that because he's jealous of him because he took his job. Let's just not do that. Let's not have the white guy take the black guy's job because he managed to get off the boat first, literally. Do I even have to spell that? No, I don't have to spell that out for you. Cecily, yeah, she runs off with a guy who lives in South America, who then abandons her a few months later. Men don't look great in this book. Did I actually enjoy parts of it? That's the funny part. Yeah. The owners are getting letters this entire time from this mysterious guy who wants to buy the place, and he's like poetic and interesting, and he like writes these riddles and these interesting questions, and he's like posing these like life altering like ideas, and parts of it were good and interesting, and most of it was just salacious and terrible and gave me the ick. Why did I read the entire thing? I don't know. The writing was good. It was compulsively readable. And then right when I'm like, oh my God, I've had enough, this storm comes in. If there's something I love, it's when books bring in this impending storm and all the character stories like suddenly speed up and have to come to a head, and like all this action is happening around them and there's this sense of urgency. I know that's really weirdly specific. That's just something I love, especially in a beach book. And like Elin Hilderbrand did it really well. So here's what I have to say. Don't read this one. Don't read her older ones. Read her newer ones, because honestly, her writing is just like that comforting beach read goodness that you want like on a beach. Read the newer ones. And I did love one of her more recent ones that's becoming like a TV show or movie, The Perfect Couple. Read that. I haven't read anything else by her that I can honestly say, yes, definitely pick it up. But will I keep trying because I randomly own a bunch of her books and I like her writing? Yes. Do I think she can write a good plot or a good character so far? TBD. At this point, the astronomy tower was my next guess, because I figured that's where you look at the moon. It makes sense. It sounds scholarly. Let's go check the astronomy tower. It was not there. I'm sad to say. So the prompt was to read a book with a copper or bronze foil elements in the title. Do you know how many books that I have? Silver foiling, gold foiling, blue. Finally, I found Foul Days. That is definitely copper. This is copper to me. This is by Genevieve Demova, and I was like, fine. I was saving this for the winter because this is rooted in like Bulgarian lore, and I was like, it's gonna be cold and chilly, and like we don't want to be wearing like a sweater. There's probably snow, but fine. I'll read it now because I am desperate. This is an interesting one. Foul Days is actually referring to these days like right in between the old and new year when monsters can come out. I assume because it's like a liminal time in between the years. Like, you know how you're supposed to carry a bride over the threshold because that's when a monster can get you because you're not inside or not outside. It's an in-between space. So monsters can come out for like 2 weeks and people like hunker down and hide away. And that's the Foul Days when this takes place. There's all this crazy stuff going on. And it's in this place where there are 2 cities and a wall between that you cannot cross. There's Chernograd and Belgrade. Chernograd is where all the monsters are. And that is where our main girl, Kasara, lives. And she is a witch. Good for her. Love to see it. And she can deal with pretty much all the monsters. Like, she's learned it all. She knows it all. She's hanging out. She's doing her, like, job as a witch, which is basically to, like, dispense information on how to deal with monsters and help people deal with monsters. Unfortunately for her, she has made one teensy tiny little mistake. She has a really sucky ex who's named This Is Me, and he happens to be the czar of monsters. Oh yeah, boy, choices, right? So she unfortunately uses her shadow in a card game when she needs to escape him, when she has finally angered him one too many times, and she needs to cross the wall. This is the only way she's gonna get to do it. And she figures this is bad because witches without their shadows get this like wasting sickness that slowly kills them. This shadow disease, it's like literally called something like that. She's like, I'm sure I've got time. She crosses over, bam, gets it almost instantly. So this detective there meets up with her, and he's about to arrest her because she's really supposed to like quarantine, make sure you haven't been bitten by anything. You're not gonna turn into a werewolf, you know, something bad in this new non-magical, non-monstrous part of the city. That's what the wall separates to keep the monsters out. And he sees that she doesn't have a shadow and she's a former witch, and he's like, dude, that sucks. However, I could use your help. It turns out you are kind of linked to this case now that I see you're without your shadow that could be linked to these murders that's happening in the cities. We think that's linked to your missing shadow. So you help me, I'll maybe help you. What do you think? And she's like, I need my shadow back. So, like, do I have a choice? Not really sure. Whatever. Because it seems like, unfortunately, who actually has her shadow? Yeah, it's her ex. This is me. We all saw this coming. It's on the other side. It's been sold back to him by some, like, gang on the human side of the city. Like, it's a really big mess. Unfortunately, she's going to need the detective. He's going to need her because he doesn't know how to fight the monsters on the other side. You know, they need each other. Okay, this was phenomenal. I did not expect this to be as good as it was. Like, I was looking forward to it, and I, like, figured it'd probably be good. I hadn't read Bulgarian folklore. First of all, if you have not, this is the edition you need. Look at this. Look at this. I don't remember who this was. Was this Owl Crate? Do I know anything anymore? No, but check this edition out. It's either Owl Crate or Bay Crate, maybe. Yeah, this is Owl Crate. So this edition is gorgeous, first of all. And we do meet all these characters, but it has some fantastic extras. So we have got in the back recipes from the city. I don't think you can see them, which is such a shame. You get the pamphlet, A Practical Guide to Monsters, the Foul Days edition. This is the Chernograd Witch and Warlock Association pamphlet she talks about handing out every year. And she mentions how annoyed she is that they work so hard on this and no one reads it. So no one knows how to prevent all these disasters or fight all of these monsters that we meet throughout everything. There's an entry on what they are, how to recognize them, and how to protect yourself from them. So that was so fun to see. The story itself is so well done. Like, if you don't know Bulgarian folklore and all the creatures, you're not gonna know what's coming. So I didn't know it was coming. But our main witch was hilarious. She's snarky and sarcastic. She's witty and funny. She goes after what she wants. And what I loved so much is in here is a letter from the author Dear Owl Crate Reader, and I was reading it, and she was talking about how she had originally felt like there was no place for Bulgarian folklore, and now that fantasy is expanding, she finally felt like she could write this book. But what was so great is the Zmi. Okay, the Zmi is the perfect villain because he is this super handsome guy, but he can also like turn into a dragon. And she talks about how in a lot of folklore, he is like an allegory for depression. There's no better villain than depression, right? Because this guy is in your head. He's telling you all these things. He's building you up. He's breaking you down. He's telling you you're worthless. He runs your life from inside your mind and determines your self-worth. There's so many ways that this played out in the story that I really can't tell you, but I can tell you that it was so well done. And having read that, I totally get it. And it makes so much sense. You know, our main character, her self-worth is linked to her magic in a lot of ways, but it is linked to her past mistakes, her relationship with Zmi. It is linked to other things as well. And having been someone who has struggled with depression for many years at this point, yay, well, future, to see like the physical representation of it was brilliantly done. I loved the creatures, I loved the magic, I loved her magic, I loved the idea of her losing her shadow, and that's what's causing her to become a shadow, the shadow sickness. Seeing the two worlds, one with magic, one without. The symbolism was great, but it wasn't overdone. You could read it looking for that, you could read it not looking for that. You could read it just as a fantasy story if you wanted to. And some of the twists at the end, I was like, what the actual F? Are you kidding? I loved this book. I cannot wait to see more from this author, more Bulgarian folklore. I will read anything set in this world, and she has some amazing characters in here who really deserve their own points of view and their own stories. I'll say it now. The fantasy was just hitting this month. Oh. After this, I went to the Moon Towers. I was like, it has the word moon in it. Oh my god. They even said it makes sense to head that way right in the description. But no, the luck was there. It was not there. We got a tour from the Moon Wardens and everything, but no, nothing. For Moon Towers, we were told to watch a movie or TV show that's either science fiction or alternatively romance. I watched Love Island. My husband and I were desperate to watch a new show, and he makes fun of me all the time for watching Love Island. So we were scrolling through stuff, and he was mocking me endlessly. And I was like, well, at least I watched Temptation Island. He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, what do you mean, what do I mean? Like, my shows aren't mean, they're about finding love. And he's like, what do you mean? So we're watching season 1 of Temptation Island, and it's awful, and I feel so bad for everyone, and I'm gonna cry at the end when, like, this one girl in particular gets her heart broken, and my husband's just mocking them endlessly, and we're never watching another show like this together ever again. I watch Love Island because it's cute and fun, and everyone starts on the same page, and they're all looking for love, and on Temptation Island, they go in as couples, and they're, like, being tempted separately, and, like, people are gonna get hurt. This is awful. No! Temptation Island is a no for me. God, okay. Yep. After this, I was like, I realized I was going in order, and I decided I'm just going to continue going in order. So I went to Crescent, Grove. Apparently this is beautiful. It's this calming garden. I was like, this is such a nice description. There's a little maze. There's crescent moons dancing around me as fireflies. The reading prompt is a tree in the cover, a bird tree in the title. For this one, I picked Expiration Dates by Rebecca Searle. This was the author who wrote, they're talking about in 5 years, still haven't read it. I read One Italian Summer last year and loved it. It made me bawl my eyes out. I didn't think this one was gonna make me cry because it sounded so much lighter. It's Rebecca Searle, I'm stupid. So this is about a girl who has one very unique thing about her, and that is that she gets these pieces of paper when she starts dating someone with their name and time frame on it, which tells her how long they're going to be dating. Kind of sounds convenient, but it also really takes the mystery away. Gonna say that. She's living with her ex at this point, who's now been her best friend. It's been like 5 years since they dated. This is not like... One day she goes out on a date with this guy, and there's just a name on the paper, and the date goes well. Like, there's no date. Expiration date. But as things unfold, she realizes, oh man, it's going well. It's going really, really well. But there's some stuff about me that, like, if he finds out, like, I think it's gonna hurt him and, like, maybe not be, like, perfect for each other after all. Why is there no damn paper? Rebecca Searle has done it again. I knew right away that, like, as soon as our main character got this piece of paper, and she was like half excited, half concerned, because she was like, oh my god, that's it. This is my last first kiss, my last first date. No more shiny new experiences. Like, it's good, I can settle into it, but I also don't know how to feel about it. That I was in for a slightly different ride than I was emotionally prepared for. And it's true that she was worried about the world losing its sparkle, and grab your tissues because, oh man, when you know your destiny, does that ruin things? The writing is great. The story is wonderful. It's a read that flies by. It's short. Even for how short it was, I felt like it went so fast. But you're always like, you're waiting. Like, you know there's something more to the story. You know there's something you're not being told. You're waiting for that other shoe to drop. And I guess it's kind of how Daphne has felt her whole life. Like, she's always waiting for the relationship to end. She knows that there's finite timelines. And in that sense, you know there's going to be a something. You know that there's gonna be a before and after. You know there's something coming. This book definitely had me thinking about my own relationship. I started dating my husband when I was 18. And I had never been in like a truly serious relationship before. And I was worried that we didn't have enough passion because we didn't fight and yell at one another. You have to learn what your own perfect love looks like, not what other people's perfect love looks like, not what destiny or fate tells you love looks like. You have to figure out what you want for yourself and what your perfect love looks like, or what a healthy relationship looks like in some cases if you don't have those wonderful, healthy, peaceful, unconditional examples set for you at any point in your life before you find your soulmate. It's got this bittersweet ending that I didn't expect. I feel like the end is not allowed to be the ending. Do have tissues. I don't regret reading it for a second. It's 5 stars. Again, for her. Like, it's 5-star writer for me, I think. It made me think. It made me introspective. As you get older, you do start to realize how many new experiences do I have left in my life. I guess with YouTuber, it turns out I have a lot of new experiences left in my life. Boy, am I learning something new every other week-ish, it seems. In all seriousness, like, it is one of those books that I'm really glad I read at the time that I read it, because it gave me some grounding thoughts in a time that has been really tumultuous for me, and reminded me that life is fleeting, yes, but new experiences are good experiences, and you don't want to always know the ending to your story all the time right away. Like, let it happen. Did I mention 5 stars? Whew. That's one of the ones that sticks with you, in case I wasn't clear. After this, I headed to the Wild Moon Inn, because of course that's going to be where it is. No, it's not. But all I had to do was make or buy a drink. That I don't treat myself too often, and the PSL just came out. So I got a pumpkin spice latte. And I also got an apple one to put in the fridge for the next day, because it's been a really, really long month. Okay? Finally. I went to the Rift Spire, and that is where this delightful journey ended, and I needed to read a book with portals and portal magic in it. I was in the middle of reading Son of Blood and Ruin, and oh, thank heavens. It turns out this had a random portal in it, and I don't feel like this is a spoiler because this has everything. This is about Lady Leonora, who's like this super proper lady who's kind of riding the line between the royalty down in Tenochtitlan, and this is like the brave new world. Okay, this is the Spanish conquistadors coming in, and Lady Leonora has actually been promised marrying the heir to the throne. So she also dresses up as Pantera! That's right. She's basically like Lady Zorro, and not gonna lie, reading the author's note, she talks about how she was inspired by Zorro, like Catherine Zeta-Jones, Antonio Banderas, apparently from 1998. So the way it's described, like, she'd sooner be caught dead than wield a sword, you know, very sarcastic description. I wasn't paying attention to, like, no one dares whisper the name of the gods. Magic once graced the land. The witches hunted as jaguars. The warriors who soared as eagles. I definitely wasn't paying attention as they were talking about how Leonora fooled them all with the magic of their ancestors running through her veins. She's nearly invincible until an ancient prophecy of destruction threatens. I missed that little sentence when I was like reading this book and thinking about it. Pantera is destined for more than an early grave, and once she discovers the truth of her origins, not even death will stop her. So I was thinking this is going to be like magic, fun, entertaining, romance, and like daring sword fights, and it's going to get really like exciting, and you know, it's all going to be about her keeping her disguise guys and like helping people. And the book opens and we get to watch like this sad old man get like executed. So immediately I'm like, oh God, I got the tone of this book so wrong and so wrong. I had it. This is a much more serious, like densely written Spanish language thrown in there. So much mythology. There's definitely violence. It wasn't like egregious, like heavily described, but like you didn't get the sense characters were super safe, and indeed they were not. They were not. And it felt really, really long. Like this book packed so much into these pages. We moved through so many settings. I'm in like two minds of it. I feel like the author tried to do so much that maybe it was too much, but it was also so interesting seeing so much. But like, you're gonna give me an origin story where there's like 5 suns, like the sun in the sky, and they all have their own like destruction. And then you're gonna tell me about like 9 different places you can go to in the afterlife. And then you're gonna tell me about her like training to be like a witch and them calling her a witch. And like the first part of the book is like her fighting against like the oppressors and the Spanish conquistadors and like her dealing with them and them like trying to capture her and all that, and dealing with like the powers that she discovered when she was lost in the jungle for 10 years. Then we're gonna go into like super hard fantasy with like gods and goddesses and like Christian God versus the gods there, and like a prophecy about the destruction of the world and how that's coming into play. And then in the end, we're gonna have it all come together. Pantera fighting the Spanish conquistadors and all the bad magical creatures who want to end the world. Wow. It was a lot. There was a romance in there that I thoroughly enjoyed. That was definitely my favorite part, and you definitely got the like up against the wall and swords and daggers and like, sorry, I'm like getting all comfortable because I love talking about romance. Wanting to like heal one another, like worry for one another, but like fighting their trash. You get all that. That was great. But like, it was so much more perilous and intense than I thought it was gonna be, and the writing was so much more serious than I thought it was gonna be. Like, I was unprepared for the punch this book was gonna pack. Like, look at the side. It's a bird. You're gonna like destroy me with a bird spray painted on the edges. There's trees on the inside. This is not a book that says like, I am going to make you fear for the lives of everyone in this book consistently for the entire book. That's not what that says to me. This does not say mortal and immortal, possibly peril, forever and ever. It was not 5 stars for me for sure. I don't think it was 3 either. Was it 4? I don't know what. I need a new number. I have to say that the mask theme was done so well. Like, the author made sure, like, I have a masked character. We're gonna unmask this. We're gonna reveal this. We're gonna do this. Consistently throughout. You were never steady on your toes, and that was really fun. One thing that I didn't like is that only our main character really was ever given any development. That is always a risk when you're getting a story. I would describe this on the YA side. Despite everything else that I'm saying, our main character still read YA in a book that was maybe set up to be an adult fantasy, and she dragged it down. And yet, she was the only character who was fully developed. My expectations, I think, was what really killed this book for me. It just did such a 180 on the tone I was expecting, and I was expecting more of a romantasy, I think, and right away, it had me, like, gasping and upset, and that's a terrible tone for a book to start out on. So I think we just didn't click. Especially having just read Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, which sort of had a similar setting and some similar like mythology inspirations to a certain extent. That was a true adult book, and that was so much more well done. Coming off of that and going into this for an adult book, this version of like the potential apocalypse, underworld, afterlife, it just couldn't compare, unfortunately. So once made to the roof spire, my sneakiest clothes, get past the guards, and there's a spiral staircase, roof spire. I get it. Get to the top, and there is a door there with a crescent symbol. I get it now. Of course, G had throw like a little shade at us and be like, you don't get it on the first try, but on your second try, you get past all the enchantments because you screwed up the first time. Second time's the charm, and in order to open the door, the prompt was to read a book with a door on the cover. So I was already reading The Summer House by the Sea by Jenny Oliver, and this is about Ava, and she just inherited her grandmother's house in Spain, and she's gonna stay there for a little while. She works in antiquities, and her boss is like, I mean, We're in Antiquity's house. You've done a ton. You've made a ton of sales. You can go take some time and like clean out your grandma's house and get it ready for sale. If you find anything great, like let us know. So she goes for one last summer. She's like, I'll spend it there. And when she gets there, she realizes that this amazing Cafe Estrella that meant so much to her and her family is also there and also like in disrepair, much like her grandmother's house and kind of much like her boring life. It's a little lackluster. It's a little unfulfilling at the moment. You know, she has her job, but she doesn't have kids. She doesn't have romance. You get the drift. She realizes at the end of her summer that like, oh my God, I've been happy for the first time. Am I really going to go back to London? Or is this the new start that I need? So this is very much what it sounds like. What I didn't expect was to get the perspective of her brother also. This both opened up new opportunities and was a good thing in some ways, but for the most part, I think it was a negative in some ways. So unfortunately, her brother was very whiny. He has a family and his wife, and somehow he was able to leave his job, no problem, and his wife, and at some points his kids, and go spend the summer in Spain. Just whatever. Books can maybe get away with doing that with one character. Doing that with two, I call BS. So right away, I was just annoyed with the book, which isn't great. I also found him annoying in general. Like, he was annoyed that potentially his sister might want to stay there and buy out the house. Like, he wouldn't be able to, like, get the money from the house or whatever. And that's her call if that's what she wants to do and is able to do that. Like, what does it matter to you? You're just jealous now. Eventually, it turns out that he is just a little upset because his last documentary did not do well. And he realizes he can make a documentary about Estrella, which they did once. So we get this whole, like, movie thing where he talks to the owner of the Estrella. Turns out they're old friends. She gets to feel glam. There's a lot of feel-good stuff going on that I really enjoyed for the first half of the book. Watching them rebuild the cafe, watching them all learn to cook Spanish food together, watching them, you know, just try to clean out the house. All of those things are like tropes in women's literature you see a lot and that I generally enjoy. And the beach scenes were lovely. Then we started to get into like his relationship issues. I'm sorry, I'm siding with his wife. And we started to get into Ava's romance, which turned out to be with an older man who started a TV show that she was obsessed with when she was a teenager. And he was like too perfect. It was too much. He owns a winery. They did the whole like harvesting grapes thing. It was so cliche and like too sweet that I just, it was too much. There was no spice. It was fine. It was a 3-star read. This is like 2.5 hours max of your life. And it was really fun for the first half. And by the end, I was just kind of like, I'm glad I finished it. I'm kind of bored. I would not go out of your way to read this one. There are so many other better summer reads and so many other better women's fic, chick lit, whatever you want to call this genre. Even like travel summer literature, beach reads, like just, there's better. There's better. Once we're finally inside the room, things get a little dramatic. The door behind us suddenly closes, and yeah, there's some stuff you would expect in there, like scrolls, desks, or whatever, but in the middle, there's apparently some giant portal, and because we're carrying this stupid book with the Legend of Dia in it, the two of them are, like, linked, and the portal turns towards us and sends out these demonic tethers at us, and we get to decide what we're gonna do with these things coming for us. We don't have much time. I probably would have gone for option 1, which was to read the nearest unread book to me, but I just had books for my unboxing video and I wasn't going to ruin that. So I went with option 3, which I never would have done in real life, but I wouldn't have chose the second one either, so I just picked the prompt I liked better. I attempted to draw the demonic tethers tighter around my hands and willed my magic to break them, which no, but the reading prompt was to read a book with my favorite trope, and we all know how much I love enemies to lovers, so this was kind of a no-brainer choice for me. A Ship of Bones and Teeth by Karina Halley. So this was a book that I was like reading the initial letter for, and she was saying like, oh, some people compare this to like dark fantasy corn, and I was like, oh god, and the list of triggers is like a mile long. I didn't really read them, and as I read more, I was like, oh, this book is dark romance, but if you're a dark romance reader, this is probably dark-ish, so don't get your hopes up expecting something deranged. So when I set sail on the night wind, I was expecting to be like shocked And no, if you have read dark romance before, while this is a great read, I loved it. It was fantastic. It is Dark Little Mermaid. It's Dark Pirates of the Caribbean mixed together. We get some fantastic stuff going on here. This is not going to shock you in any way, shape, or form. Is it going to titillate you to some degree? Yes. Yes, it will. But are you going to be like, gash up horrified? No. If you are someone who's sitting here and been like, I've done the Den of Vipers thing, I've done the Tears of Tess, where are we headed? The premise of this book is that Ariel, or in this book, Marin, sold her voice away, and in this case, her tongue, which thankfully grew back, to a sea witch so that she could have legs and marry Prince Eric, who she really didn't know. And Eric, he went for it, but it turns out he's an abusive dick. Yeah, no, awful, terrible. And she does not want to be married to this man, but you know what? She's kind of stuck with him, because what is she gonna do on land? She's married to a prince. Like, what do you do? Their ship winds up getting kidnapped by this really fearsome pirate who has this terrible reputation. They're called the Brethren of the Blood, and they leave no one alive, only they do take a couple people alive because, you know, prince and princess, they're worth a really big ransom. So it's worth keeping them alive. And that is where our story kind of takes off. Bones Batista over here thinks Marin's hot, and Marin kind of thinks he is hot. And you know what? She doesn't really want to be with the prince. She doesn't really care about the prince. And it turns out, Bones, he really has it out for the same sea witch she now has it out for, and would really like to get revenge on, and kind of like to be a mermaid again. Siren, she's technically a siren in this book, if she could be. So the two of them can now link up, and they have this amazing chemistry. They really want each other. They really hate each other. It's one of those. Yeah, but he did not take into account how freaking bloodthirsty she is, according to the summary anyway. She's really bloodthirsty too. They don't underestimate that part. But yeah, revenge, 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 sex. I loved this book. Is there violence? Yes, sure, fine. But look, I went into this figuring there'd be violence, but wanting some really good scenes. And do I get my, like, BDSM enjoyable sex scenes? I mean, we're going chains here instead of ropes. I did enjoy that. But did we see anything particularly depraved in the bedroom beyond a chain? No. Not really. We go 100 pages without, like, anything more than, like, a up against the wall with a sword kind of situation. And obviously her being, like, you know, chained up and whatever, but nothing beyond that. In fact, he respects her a little too much, if you ask my opinion. But what do I know? I appreciated it in the end. It meant they could have a genuine love story. And you know what? This is actually fantasy with smut. This is romantasy. This is not smutty smut like I thought it was going to be, okay? This has a real plot. This has really interesting magic. This has really interesting lore. What this book did was taking the idea of land witches, sea witches, sirens versus mermaids. We had this really interesting combination. We saw krakens, and then we saw this whole Pirates of the Caribbean thing come in, but we saw that done in two completely different ways, the two completely different undead crews. That was super interesting. Totally different curses, totally different ideas of curses. The author put some work in. There was originality. This felt fresh. I often don't do particularly well with seafaring fantasy. I don't know what it is. Is it the fact that we're stuck in one place the entire time? Is it the fact that I don't like pirates? I don't know. Whatever I normally don't like was fixed in this book for me. And the smut was good. Okay, the smut was good. Could it have gone further in my opinion? Yes. Could it have gone further before being depraved? Yes. Does this even qualify as dark romance? Really? I think I need to get my, like, radar recalibrated. Was this 5 stars? Am I gonna give a Ship of Bones and Teeth 5 stars? Am I really gonna do that? Oh god, I think I am. Unfortunately, T's just like, you tried! You almost got there, but y'all really are sucking this semester. Sorry. The tethers wrap around you, pull you into the portal. In this vacuum, you can smell leaves, pastries, rain, paper. You can feel the very concept of time. Everything stops and speeds up at once. You cannot tell up from down, last century from this, yourself from your friends. It is freeing, yet quietly terrifying. It is basically the sensation I experience when I try to wake up. Apparently, I should know I should feel as though I'm in danger, but I just can't quite seem to get there. Finally, with one last tug, I am spat out of the portal, and it takes me a moment to gather myself, and when I open my eyes, I see ... I see at the bottom of the page that this is to be continued. So yay. Thankfully, the autumn semester is upon us, so I guess I'll find out sooner rather than later what I see in front of me. But you know what? After the snark we got in these last two entries, I'm a little nervous. Not gonna lie. But let me know what you thought about any of the other books that I read. Did you do the lore challenge? Are you participating in Orilium right now? How's it going? I get to start my books now. Have I read a single thing for the actual Orilium fall semester? No. Thank you for asking. I'll let you get back to your book, and I'm going to start my fall semester reads, all 19, 20 of them. Wish me luck, and I'll see you next time, guys. Bye. Oh God, I'm doomed.